One, two, three.
Welcome to Scéalta. My name is Joe Austin. And my guest today is someone who probably doesn't really need an introduction, but I don't get an opportunity to talk to stars very much, let alone introduce them. And it's Geraldine Hughes. So listen, welcome to Scéalta.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I know that you're extremely busy, and I also know that you're doing this interview standing because you've done something to your back and it's not the most comfortable. So thank you. Can I just explain to those who have joined us that Scéalta is a production of Falsa Fierce to Hear and Film and Fubble. And I know you're very close to Film and Fubble. You're someone
Yes.
who defends it when it needs defended and promotes it at every opportunity.
Yeah.
So let me begin with this, and then we'll of course let you do all the talking after it. We were doing some research just for the interview, and we were tracing your journey from, I don't know why you call it the Governor or the lower part of the Falls Road, to New York. And I have to tell you, if it was a film or if it was a book, people wouldn't believe it. It is the ultimate fairy tale. It is the ultimate success story, I suppose. That's how you would describe it. So if you can take us through it. So St. Louise's, take us from that point of your life.
Yeah, I mean, it's lovely to meet you. I can't wait to meet you in person.
Well, you will.
Thanks for having me. Yes, I live in New York now, but I grew up, most of my growing up was in Divis Flats, which was an unconscionable notion when you think back upon it. A terrible place to live in terms of the worst housing project in Europe at the time, in the middle of a war. It was pretty awful. But was born in Country Road, the Pound Loney, the old Loney, I suppose, right? And
Absolutely.
then we moved to Divis Flats, and we were there for about 10 years, and we were in Country Row, and then we moved to St. Jude's Path. And then we got a house in Roden Street off the Grosvenor. Blackwater Way, but it's Roden Street. So we moved from Divis Flats to the Peace Line. So it was it was a move. And my mom still lives on that street, and all my family are still in West Belfast and holding down the fort. But very quickly, I ended up getting cast in a film when I was 13. I always loved acting, and I always loved, Joe, I always loved anything that provided escapism from the horrors of what was going on as a child, the war zone and everything that was going on. So I loved school. I was in the debating society. I was in the school shows. I did anything not to be, to feel safe. And I always felt safe in school. And St. Louise's was an extraordinary school to go to. And Sister Genevieve, of course, at the time was the headmistress. And a lot of people had their feelings about Sister Genevieve. But for me, she was an incredible help, was always there when I needed her. I mean, I'd walk along the corridor and sometimes she'd slip me a fiver, because she knew. She'd say, get something for the tea. She knew we had nothing. She was amazing that way. Anyway, I got cast in this film. It's called Children in the Crossfire, about the program that brought Protestant and Catholic kids together in American homes for the summer. And I was in Los Angeles when I was 13, like, what's happening, and had that experience, and then was sort of thrown back home. I mean, I was 13, so I had to go back home. And I decided as a child, after that experience, that this was a way out for me. This is something I love to do, and this is something that I would make happen for myself. And the only place I knew was America. So I made it happen in terms of, I stayed out of trouble, I stayed in school, I studied hard, and I semi-secretly got myself into an American university. And I left home when I was 18. I was a child. I knew nothing about life other than how to survive a war. And I was in Los Angeles and started a life there. And it's a very, very long and complicated story after that. But here I am. I'm in New York. I live in upstate New York now, happily married. Have done some things that I'm proud of in the acting world. And yeah, I mean, that's in a very brief summary, you know.
And if you don't mind, can I bring you back a couple of reels?
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
to get us that. You played Murray, I think, in the first film. Was it Murray?
Mary and Children in the Crossfire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had spoken to someone about you, about you actually went to school with you.
Oh, yeah.
And they said that a natural talent, a talent to tell stories, a talent to just engage with people. Is that a fair assessment of you?
I have to say, you know, it's a bit embarrassing this because I just, you know, anyway, I will not be embarrassed and I will talk about myself. Yes, I love people and I love people's stories and I love hearing their stories and I love telling stories. So yes, I think that would be a spot on thing. And I always thought that if I never got into acting, I would either be a teacher or a therapist, you know, because I just love people. I love that we're all so different and we're all in this together, and nothing makes me happier than meeting people and hearing their stories.
Can I ask you the reaction? Is Eamon your father? Was Eamon your father?
He was, yeah.
Yes. Like, I mean, I just imagine one of my daughters coming in and saying, you know, father, dad, whatever, I'm going to America and I'm going to be a film star and I'm going to babysit for Danny DeVito and I don't know how I'm going to do it, but you know, I'm going to do it. I think they would be saying, go up to bed and lie down for a while. You've probably been drinking. What was the family reaction to this kind of announcement?
Well, my daddy, my daddy Eamon, he died just about 6 months or so before. I it's very interesting you talk about my daddy because no one ever does, and I love that you brought him up. He certainly was there when I was doing Children in the Crossfire, and he was so proud of me, you know. And I have this great picture of him and my mom on the set when we were filming part of it in Ireland, and he was so supportive, and he just kept. He was, you know, I know he was very proud of me, and I think the unfortunate and saddest part of my journey is that he never got to come here and he never knew any of that. Well, I think he does because I believe he's around. But
of course he does.
But my mom and my family, I mean, they're all so proud of me. But what I love about Belfast and what I love about West Belfast and my people is that it doesn't matter what you've done. You know, you're still wee Geraldine from Divis. You know, like my favorite thing is when I go home. It's my favorite thing that happens every time I go home. I walk from the Grosvenor down into the town, you know, and often by myself if I'm home visiting, and inevitably a car will slow down and the window will go down, and I'll be like, "Here we go, hey Rocky, hey Geraldine, hey Rocky, you know, you're brilliant," and I would go dead on. He goes, "Dead proud of you, kid, dead proud of you," and for me, it's like the best thing ever, you know. I love it. I love it.
I would say that there's very little that you have been doing in terms of your career that your father hasn't been somewhere over somebody's shoulder saying, "Yeah, that's the way you do it." Or
He's
in
up
the
there
early
with Uncle Sean.
in the early hours of the morning, I'm Sean, your
Yeah.
Uncle Sean. But in the early hours of the morning, when that great idea comes, this is how you do it. I would say your father's about there somewhere.
Yeah.
University in America, and I don't mean to be patronizing, but a young woman, very sheltered life, very family orientated, going to America, going to university. Was it a lonely experience?
Yeah. I love these questions. No one ever asked me about this. It was very lonely. It was very scary. I couldn't drive, so I lived very far away from the university, so I'd have to get a 5:30 a.m. bus, and I'd get that to the campus, and then if I didn't have class until about 3, it didn't matter because there was no other way to get there. It was very lonely. I didn't know anything about life. I was very innocent because I spent my whole life just studying and sitting in my room and being afraid of everything and just America, America, get me out of here, get me out of here. So when I landed there, it was like, I'd never even sat next to not to say, you know, I hadn't kissed a few boys before I left, but like sitting next to even boys in a class, I'd never even done that, you know. But what was extraordinary was that you mentioned Danny DeVito earlier. What was extraordinary was a year and a half into that process, I got a job as the weekend nanny for Danny and Rhea and their kids. And so then I would go to school full time. I would schedule my classes from a Tuesday morning through a Friday, and then I'd leave on a Friday afternoon and spend Friday, Saturday, Sunday taking care of the kids with them all weekend, and then go straight back to school. And the thing that they did was, I think it was maybe, I'm not sure how long into the job it was, but they said, "How do you get here?" And I said, "Well, I get someone to give me a lift, or I get 5 buses or whatever." And they gave me a check for a second-hand car. And they said, "Go get a second-hand car." And they became up my family.
And I know that friendship has existed right until today.
Yeah.
I asked someone who was in the drama class with you, because I was trying to get a sense of, you know, were you a lovey? Were you someone who was, and clearly listening to the interview, it's like you haven't left Divis or the Governor Road. Your accent is.
I have a wee bit of a twang, but after 32
No,
I'm
it's
entitled.
intact. It's intact. But they were saying that one of the things about you in the drama school, now you're very young, you were still at school and you were young, was that you were courageous as an actress. That there wasn't a role that you wouldn't have a go at.
Hmm.
And if I look down your resume from theatre, from film, and I want to talk about Belfast Blues, of course, that you would appreciate. But do you have that sense of courage when it comes to the parts you take, the parts you play?
I wouldn't call it courage. I would just call it curiosity. You know, I think that I'm curious about everything. It's interesting because at this time of my life, at the minute, I'm my desire. Well, my desire to act is very much still there, but I very much want to produce now, produce theatre and produce film. But that's another conversation. But in terms of an actor, I have never had a career where I've never been an ingenue. I've never been the pretty lead. I've always been the character actress, and those character parts are always much more interesting and much more diverse, and they're different every time. So it started at St. Louise's when I was always cast as the male lead in the musicals, and I can't sing. And inevitably, by dress rehearsal, the music teacher would come up, Mr. Freel, God bless him. He'd come up and he'd go, "Geraldine, why don't we just try speaking the songs?" And I got away with it. But yeah, I don't know about being courageous when it comes up. But that's a very nice thing to say. But I am curious, and I'm willing to give it a lash, as I say.
Well, let's reverse that question just for accuracy. If it was someone else who we were talking about, and they took on those roles that you have taken on in a very short space, and they had the resume of films, television, theatre, would they be courageous?
Absolutely.
Thank you. That was what I was trying to get at. So you mentioned the cars honking in West Belfast, and I'm sure other places, and talking about the Rocky films. So the Rocky film. So tell me how did you arrive at that? How did you get to be in that?
That was because of Belfast Blues, believe it or not. I had begun to perform Belfast Blues in Los Angeles. I started in a 35-seat converted shoe shop when I first started performing it, and I did that for about 15 weeks, and then I did it at anyway, I did it at a bunch of wee tiny places. Excuse me. But this casting director called Sheila Jaffe, she had seen it and she rang me, and I actually, coinciding with this this is all crazy, because this is what happens in life. You sit around and then everything happens at once. So I was actually married before, and I was moving with that person to New York because I had been cast in a play called Shining City by Conor McPherson, and it was going to be my Broadway debut. And it was supposed to be with Rufus Sewell and Stanley Townsend, and Conor was going to direct it. Anyway, it was unbelievable. I was like, oh my God. So selling our wee house and moving to New York. Oh, brilliant. Then I got a call from Sheila Jaffe saying, will you come audition for this Rocky film? And the description of the character was little Marie in her 40s, overweight, and has had one too many bad perms. Sheila, and she said, just come in and read. So I went in and read, and she said, and then I let it go, okay, I'm going to move to New York. Then I get a call from Conor McPherson, and it was a beautiful call, and he said, I'm so sorry, everything's fallen apart. The play's not happening. But I was already moving to New York.
So what could you do?
So the last day in Los Angeles, before I was moving to New York, I get 2 phone calls. One is from Michael Keaton. I'm not dropping names here.
No, please do.
One is from Michael Keaton and one is from Sheila Jaffe. And Michael Keaton called and he said, I saw this Belfast Blues. I said, oh, great. He said, can I have a cup of coffee with you and talk about it? I said, yeah, but I'm going to New York tomorrow, so it'll have to be today. He says, okay. So I'm sitting with him in a dirty t-shirt because I've been packing up the house and everything. And I'm having a cup of coffee with him, and we're talking about Belfast Blues and how much he loves it, and maybe would do something about it and with it and all that stuff. And I'm like, great. And then my phone rings, and it's Sheila Jaffe, and she says, can you get to Sony Studios in like 15 minutes? I said, I'm sitting with Michael Keaton having a conversation. What's happening? She said, Sylvester wants to have a conversation with you. And I was like, is this my life? I said, sorry, Michael Keaton, I have to go and talk to Sylvester Stallone at Sony Studios. What? It's so crazy.
I would love to have to say that. I would love to have to say, yeah, I can't take this call. I'm talking to Hollywood.
I haven't thought about that moment in a very, very long time. And you're really bringing me back. So I went and had the meeting with Sylvester, and then I moved to New York and forgot all about it. And I was in New York for 5 days, and Sheila called and said, come back to Los Angeles. You got the part. Amazing. So there you go. Yeah.
And we're talking about these people who most of us will have seen in the movies or seen on television, and you've worked with them. So I know this is not about trade secrets or anything like that, but were you frightened working? I mean, let me just give just a couple of names. Keaton, you just mentioned, Clint Eastwood, Danny DeVito, and now you're talking to Stallone. So was it intimidating? Did you have the confidence of your ability?
Well, I never worked with Michael. I would love to work with Michael Keaton. I thought, oh, that's really cool. I'm never one to sort of get overly impressed just because someone's famous. I get overly impressed by, okay, here's the joke with me, right? If there's a party, say it's one of these Hollywood parties, right? And I'm invited, and I'm like, I go kicking and screaming, and then I end up talking to the woman in the kitchen, or because I don't really care about that celebrity stuff. I think it's really cool, and I think people are brilliant artists, and I'm enamored by that, but I'm enamored by people. So I don't get weak at the knees, and I don't get that. I did get very, very, very shooken up when I met Barack Obama and shook his hand in the White House. Yeah, that's something,
That would be impressive.
That was something. When I walked into the White House and I was in the presence, I've had 2 opportunities. One was when Bush was in power, and I did not shake his hand. And that was an interesting experience. But when I got invited again, Barack Obama, and I got to shake his hand, my mommy has a picture on her mantelpiece. It's a terrible picture. It's one of these pictures like this. It looked like that. And, but I was like, this is a great man. This is a great, sacred, beautiful place. And I was very enamored by that, you know.
Well, that's why when I done the introduction as such, I deliberately said that this is a fairy tale journey. It is something that really most people wouldn't ever believe could happen. And it happens, and it keeps happening, and it's still happening. But a while ago, it almost nearly came to an end. You were quite sick. You had a stomach difficulty.
Oh yeah, I wasn't at death's door, but
No,
I was very ill for quite a while.
if you don't
I
mind, if you don't mind, tell us about it. If you don't mind without giving personal
yeah,
details, because
no,
out of
not
that,
at all.
yeah,
Yeah, not at all. I mean, listen, there's been a number. Listen, there's a fairy tale, right? But it's also the amount of struggle that has gone into the journey of getting here. I will say to you in complete and utter transparency, this is the happiest I've ever been in my entire life.
because you're talking to me, or just where you are in life.
Correct. Yes. Yes. That is absolutely why. But all the journey here, like, you know, I'm talking to you and I'm looking back, some really hard times, like everybody goes through. But yeah, I was in so much pain, and I was depressed, and I was lethargic, and I would need to go to bed at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I was just not myself, and ended up in the emergency room a couple of times on morphine because of this pain in my stomach. Had scans and MRIs, and everything was clear. Couldn't figure it out. And lo and behold, it is the Irish curse of gluten intolerance. And that's all it was. And I went to a doctor and had an endoscopy, right?
Yeah,
Endoscopy, that's
yeah,
the throat.
yeah.
And the colonoscopy is the other end. And we did an experiment of adding and taking away gluten and all that. And that's exactly what it was. And my life overnight, the head cleared, the stomach got better, and my energy came back, and I got my life back.
Did you ever think, and I know you didn't get to where you are today without effort and without sacrifice and without sleepless nights. I understand that. I understand that. But that illness, you didn't know initially what it was, but was there a period where you thought, apart from the fact that you were quite ill, did you think, like, whatever career I thought I had in front of me, it's not going to happen. I'm too sick. I'm too ill. Was that ever a thought that crossed your mind?
No, never stopped me going to work.
Very good.
I always thought that I think that work saves us. And, you know, especially if you're in the theater, you could have 105 fever and be vomiting your guts out, and you drag yourself to the theater, and you take the medicine, and you put your costume on, and you think, I'm not going to be able to do this. And they say, there's your cue light, and you walk on stage, and Dr. Theater takes care of it, and you get through the job, and then you can collapse when you come off stage.
I think there's a bit of your mother in that philosophy, as well as I was asking about your mother. I was asking someone and they said, well, no, she's great. Whenever you see her, how are you? Wonderful.
Oh yeah.
Apparently, she's never known to be in bad form. Is that true?
Well, now
I
mommy
don't mean angry form. I mean bad.
No, listen, my mom has always sort of gotten on with it. You know, she raised 6 kids, and she's 81 now, and what she's gone through this year has been really probably the worst year of her life, and she's still doing really well. She lost her sister, my Aunt Claire, to COVID in April. And to bury your sister and watch it on a computer screen, like many people have had to do, was horrible. And she was in extreme pain herself. And we got her a hip replacement in the middle of all this.
Very good.
And now she's back to herself, and she'll be back on a plane coming to see us here. I'll have her here for a month or two, for as long as she wants, and just take care of her now. She's absolutely brilliant.
Well, with the taking care part, I have to tell you, if you don't already know that, she claims that she takes care of you. So it's the other way around.
Are you sure this is Sheila Hughes you've been talking to? Sorry, Mommy.
Out of the illness, you kind of became more health conscious, and you.
Yeah.
So again, if you don't mind, so how did your health regime change?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky. I'm not afraid to talk about how old I am. I mean, I'm going to be the big 50 in a matter of days here, and
Congratulations.
thanks. I think it's easier because I don't have children, so can always get a good night's sleep. But yoga and meditation is a big part of my life, and we moved up here to upstate New York 6 years ago. So we live a very active life, a lot of hiking and biking, and we've got 100-pound chocolate Labrador who may or may not make an appearance at some point. And don't really, was never a big sort of partier, wasn't into drugs or a lot of booze or anything. They all make fun of me when I go home because I get frightened when everyone says, right, we're going to the pub. And I start going, right, okay, just to prepare myself. Because, you have to buy the rounds, and I don't really drink very much. And I'm like, oh, God, please, just how can I hide the drink? I'm very lucky. I mean, I just decided that I wanted to live a long and healthy life. If I could help with that, then I do. Don't smoke or anything. I'm a bit of a bore, but.
Apparently, you're a connoisseur of Cadbury's chocolate.
Now, that would be my weakness, yes. I have actually placed the order with my sisters, and I haven't done that in a long time. But if you put a big bar of Cadbury's whole nut, the really big ones,
yep,
and a cup of tea, forget it.
That's it.
There's no control, Joe.
Just eat it all. Eat it all. Enjoy.
That's it. Yep.
On a more serious note, and I want to talk about your theatre work in a wee second, but COVID has decimated, well, it appears to have decimated America. The level of deaths and the level of illnesses, and particularly the theatre and cinema and all of that, it has just been such a horrible experience. I mean, is that your experience of it? I mean,
yeah, it's a brutal, awful thing to go into the city and have Times Square and all of those beautiful theaters off Broadway just be shut. There are no lights on. And hundreds of thousands of people that's affected. If you just take Manhattan alone, you think about the crews, as well as the actors, front of house staff. Then you think about the restaurants, and everything is closing. It's a really, really scary, awful thing. And at the same time, TV and film production seem to be doing okay. They seem to have COVID budgets. And, I was filming for a while in New Orleans this year, and there was not rapid, but a lot of testing every week. Like if I had another swab up my nose, but it was like mask and a shield and hand sanitizers and COVID coordinators. But in the theater, you can't do that because you have people gathering who sit next to one another. And I just hope and pray to the gods and goddesses of the world that we can get back. And I think the only way to truly bring it back, and the only way we can bring it back, is when everyone's vaccinated,
Yeah.
And that's a while away. So there's a lot of depression, and it's why part of the reason why I opened up a creative space on Zoom at the beginning of all this, for people to come and gather and write and just check in. And that's been going really well. And I feel really good about that. but it's terrifying. I was in Harry Potter. I was in the original cast of Harry Potter for a year and a half, and I had left that. But you know, I have many friends who are still in that show and need that show for their health insurance and for their livelihoods, and it's just gone.
The only thing that I could say about all of that, and you know, watching it from afar, it's bad here. Don't get me wrong, but it seems to be just in terms of the volume of deprivation smaller, but it's obviously bad. And you know, my brother died earlier this year as well. So you have all these experiences, but
Yeah,
it seems to be the hopelessness that affects people is such destructive. You
yeah,
would like to think perhaps out of that there is a artistic experience and books will be written and poetry will be written and songs and all of that. If I can move you on just, and I know you're pressed for time, I could talk and do talk for Ireland, but I can talk.
well, maybe we'll do a part 2.
We'll do a part 2.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Belfast Blues.
Yeah.
I recently interviewed an Irish actor who worked and works in England. And in the course of the conversation, he talked about a theatre piece, a one man, in his case, theatre piece that he had put together.
Uh-huh.
And I asked him what it was like. And he said, it's like having a baby without labour pains. Every night you go on. He said, it's the trepidation of what you're doing has to be so perfect. And a one person show, you have nobody to hide behind. You can't blame anybody else. It's you, it's the audience, and it's what's in between the ears. And he said, it's terrifying. Not once, every night.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true?
Well, I don't know who that person was, but a man talking about labour and labour pains is immediately dismissed, in my opinion. And secondly, I would also disagree with the word perfection, because I think there is perfection and imperfection. And I think the wonderful point that I got to with Belfast Blues was that I was able to go on, and it's okay if something goes wrong. It's okay if there's an interruption. It's okay if I forget where I am, because it's mine and I can do whatever I want with it. And once I know that the people are there listening and they're in it, I mean, there've been a number of times. I remember one time I was doing it and I completely lost my mind. I was like, I have no idea where I am. And I just stood there for ages and ages. And I thought, now what am I going to do? I have no idea. And everyone sat with me and waited, because they don't know I forgot the line. They just thought it was part of the show. You know, it's wonderful, but it did take me a while to get there. I mean, I did write the show a long time ago, and the last time I did it in Belfast, which is always my favorite place to do it because everyone's ahead of the joke, you know, it's brilliant. Yeah, I just felt like, and it comes with age as well. It's like, you know, I don't want to apologize anymore for being up here. If you paid money to come and see me tell the story, I'm just going to tell a story, and you can have whatever reaction you want to it, you know, because that's the beauty of it, you know. But yeah, it's lonely. It's very lonely. I will say that. You're in the dressing room by yourself, like, when's the rest of the cast going to show up?
How many characters?
24.
I mean, how do you remember? Never mind anything else.
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's the way I wrote it. And I mean, you know, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. If you don't practice, you don't get there. It's a lot of hard work. You know, these things just don't. I think that's what people forget sometimes too, Joe, about this profession. You know, there's a lot of glamour to it, like people you see on TV, and there's a lot of it is. You have to work at it. You know, you have to put in the work. Listen, there are like 5 people in the world who've never put in the work and who are famous and rich and fabulous, and you know, lucky them. But the rest of us have to graft at it, you know, and also understand that most of the jobs you're going to go for as an actor, you will not get.
How I'm assuming that every job you go for, that you put your heart and soul into it because you want to get it, you know. And so how does that disappointment affect you? You know, do you walk away going, well, that's okay, that's the way it goes, something else will come along? If it was me, I would go home and cry.
I think a lot of times I've gone home and cried. I think a lot of times, I think most actors cry a lot because they didn't get the job. Something changed for me when I got a piece of advice. One of my best friends in the whole world is Carol Kane, and she's friends with Al Pacino. And she said to me one day, you know, Geraldine, Al always says, it's not about getting the job, it's an opportunity to act. And you will walk into a room and there will be an audience and you will get to act. And if someone says, what did you do today? You say, I acted. And if you can get yourself to that place, sometimes I do. Now these days, I don't know what's happened, but I just don't care anymore about that.
I know what's happened. You've just got married. That's what's happened.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he's the love of my life. He is the most gorgeous, gorgeous Connemara man, Irish speaker, brilliant, chivalrous, gorgeous.
And as your mother would say, he has the patience of a saint.
He has the patience of a saint. He is an astonishing human being. We're very good together. Yeah, great.
We've talked quite a lot about your acting and your theatre work and your television stuff. I'm not going to list them all, because to list them all we'd just finish the interview and we wouldn't get any further. But it is fair to say that you have a portfolio that several actors combined couldn't fill it. You've been from television to theatre, as I've said, to writing, to film, and all of that. But that's not the sum total of you. There is much more to you than all of that. And I said in passing that you are a champion of integrated education. Now, as am I have to say. And I would say, as is anyone who has sense, but that's another subject. Do you believe that on the old adage, you know, educate that you may be free? Do you believe that education is the cornerstone to what you become, or at least part of it, or is it just something that helps you along the way?
I think it's an extremely important thing to educate your population. And a direct example of what happens when you don't educate your population is you have how America looks today. I think that an enormous amount of what's happening in this country is because people have not traveled and they're not educated. They do not know. They just follow blindly because they haven't been educated about the other, especially. Yeah. So with integrated education at home, it is the only way forward, because you sit next to someone who doesn't look like you, who doesn't believe in the same God or goddess or whatever. But humanity is the sameness, right? So we're all the same. And it makes no sense to me that children should be brought up and educated within their own sect, you know, their own way. I mean, religion is practiced at home and you go to your church and you go to wherever you want to practice. That's a different story. Learning about the world, learning about history, reading, it's people should just, the kids should just be together. It shouldn't even be a discussion anymore, you know? And I am so proud of May Blood and Paul Kasky and IEF and everything they fight for and the people they talk to, and they're unapologetic about their mission. And I would do anything for them. I think it's so important. Yeah, I mean, that's it, you know, in a nutshell. That's how I feel about it.
Well, I subscribe to everything you've said. I think education it's not the only way, but it's one of the most important ways of changing any society.
Yeah.
Economics, of course, is another, and so on and
Right.
so forth.
And health and keeping your
And all of those things. And all of
yeah.
those things. You mentioned, I was going to mention it, but you mentioned about, you're never very far away from Belfast. I don't mean spiritually. I mean you're home as often as you can be, and
Yeah.
you're home an hour, and you're back to the person from that part
Yeah.
of Belfast and all of that. Do you see much change in the city from that young girl growing up in the 80s?
Yeah. I
70s,
mean,
80s, yeah.
oh yeah. I mean, there's the obvious changes, right? I mean, I'm not, the military and all of that being gone and all of Divis flats being gone and sort of the actual physicality of it being different and how the city centre looks and all of the money that's been poured into that. I do constantly say though to people, we cannot forget about the forgotten people. There are the ghettos, as we would say. There's the Cabrini Greens in Chicago and the places in Philadelphia, the areas where I shot Rocky and where, people were on the streets doing heroin, and then you'd go into the middle of the city and there's, all of this incredible stuff. So for me, it's really important as a person from poverty and from that place. I think the best thing I can do is be a good example for the kids. But a big change and a scary change for me is, I hate to get dark about it, but I'm so worried about the next generation and the suicide and the drugs and that kind of infiltration into working class areas. That's and you talked about hope earlier. It's like, even an environment, just to walk down the street and have it be clean and have some nice things and nice painting and, pour some money into those environments. So when people literally walk out their door and kids literally come home, they're in a nicer environment, and we just have to help the kids more. I'm not sure how to do that or but that worries me. And on a brighter note, on the other side of that, for me, I'm so excited because I'm going to be coming home a lot over the next few years because I am finally going to be coming home to direct and produce some films at home. One is ready to go. It's a short film. I'll be casting it in the summer. I'm going to hopefully directing it in the fall as soon as I can get my vaccination. I have two other feature films. One I'm going to make a decision on that soon, and the other one is I'm actively engaged in that. Should be home with that in a year and a half. So the film industry and production side of life at home is amazing.
Yeah.
That has exploded. And it used to be you had to leave home in order to have a career. Now you can stay and work. That's really exciting to me. Yeah.
We have 5 minutes left, and I want to give those 5 minutes to you just to talk about how you see your own career and how you think, apart from what you've just explained. But let me tell you two things which may confirm what you were saying. On the way here to do the conversation with you, I met someone from your part of the world in Belfast, and they asked me what I was doing. I said I was going to talk to you, and they said she's a great runner. She's a great runner. So they said that one of the times you were here, you were out running. Do you run?
Oh my God, people really do remember. God, you're watched, aren't you, when you go home? I used to run. Yes, I used to run, and I would run from my mommy's house down to the Lagan and back again. But that, not anymore. That's at least 15 years ago. That's so funny. Yeah, I used to love to run, but I obviously now my back and stuff. But no.
And the second thing that I want to say to you is that. And it's about motivating people and the things you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Part of the motivation of young kids, young girls in St. Louise's who are going through drama, one of them being my granddaughter. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
One of the ways is that they mention you in drama school. This is what you can do. You can be here. and this is a former pupil, and this is where they go. So I mean, motivation and all of that is everywhere. So in the last 3 minutes, and I've nearly talked as much as you. In the last couple of minutes, hopes, plans for the future, apart from the film.
Well, I think for me, I want to continue to tell great stories and important stories. I mean, as an actor, I would love to do some more incredible stuff on Broadway. That's what interests me. The stage, when we get back, I'll be right there. And in life, it's funny because I'm reevaluating a lot about what I want to do in my sort of second half here. And I think I'm gonna, well, I can't really talk about it, but there's something charitable that I'm going to begin at home as well for kids. And that's my interest. I just want to keep doing what I'm doing, and being a good example, and waking up every day and being bloody grateful that I've been once again reborn. I mean, I'm very open about the fact, I'm a big believer in therapy and getting help that way. And I've been speaking to someone for over 15 years. And she said to me the other day, I said, "Oh, I feel great. I feel like my favorite words in life are start over or begin again." And she said, "Well, how about reborn? Because every day you're reborn." And I just feel like that. I just take every day as it comes, But I'm going to go home a lot, eat a lot of Cadbury's chocolate. And, no, I mean, that's it, Joe. I don't, I have some pretty grand plans in terms of being a producer, and that's very exciting to me.
Well, I have to say, you've left the door open for a Geraldine Hughes Part 2.
Yes, I'm in.
So we'll be coming rapping on your door.
Absolutely.
So listen, we're out of time, and more importantly, you're out of your time. So
I know I have to go.
Can I thank you? And I thank you for taking time out. And I know you're busy, and I know you've carried out this interview standing because you've got a sore back. So let's end that part of the pain for you. So from the Scéalta program, thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your assistance to integrated education, to the film football, to the drama, to the theatre community, to all of that. And thank you for being entertaining.
Listen, this has been a complete and utter joy, and I want to do this again in person.
Well, more for me than for you, because I will feast out on this conversation.
Yay! Well, do me a favor and kiss West Belfast for me, will you? I miss it terribly.
Every individual I give them a kiss. Mightn't be that popular, but I'll try anyway.
Be careful with COVID. Just blow them a kiss.
Thank you, Geraldine.